Jai Hind students. So welcome to the class, and today's our topic is about the menstrual cycle. So we have to see that how this sexual cycle is functional and what is its work in the human female reproductive system. So let's start with this. The menstrual cycle is actually a cyclic ovulation phase it depends on, in which the ovum it gets received by the uterus, so that uterus is always in the hope that the ovum is going to come, the fertilized ovum, so that there can be the chances of pregnancy or conceiving. But in the case when it doesn't happen, then the ovum, which is unfertilized, it gets off from the body through this menstrual cycle. So now let's see what it is and how does it happen. In the human female, this cycle is continuous or again done on the time interval of 28 days. So within 28 days, this cycle repeats itself. Alright. So let us see some terms for this, then we'll further start. First, menstrual cycle, when it starts at the time of puberty. So it starts at the time of puberty, when a girl reaches to the age of 10, 12, 13. So when her puberty starts, at that time the first menstrual cycle which takes place is called as menarche. So menarche is the first menstrual when it gets started. The other word is menopause. Menopause means the last menstrual cycle which happens in a human female's life, that is maybe 58, maybe 45, maybe 48, 55, whatever age it can be. So at whatever age, generally it lasts up to age of 50 to 45. So the last menstruation which happens, that is called as the menopause. The other two hormones are here. These two hormones are secreted by the ovary, called estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen is the hormone which is secreted by the ovary, and its function is to control this menstrual cycle, to make it repeated again and again. The other hormone is progesterone. The progesterone is released from the corpus luteum. Now maybe you will wonder that what is this word corpus luteum actually. So when you will see, for example, if this is a structure of ovary, then inside the ovary, as you know that in this ovary the ovum is going to get fertilized. Suppose this is ovary and this is the ovum or the egg which you call. So this is going to get fertilized, right? So now what happens when this ovum is developing, when this ovum, before releasing, it will mature itself, it will be first formed, right? So now what happens, here around this some follicles are formed. These are at the first stage called primary, secondary and tertiary follicles. When it reaches to the tertiary follicle state, at that time this ovum becomes matured. Now here at the tertiary follicle, when it develops, now this ovum is ready to be out from the ovary and to be traveled to the fallopian tube. So now what will happen, when this ovum will come out of this tertiary follicle, now this tertiary follicle, which follicle is over here, this follicle will get converted into the corpus luteum. This is called as corpus luteum. Now the progesterone hormone is released from the corpus luteum in the blood to maintain the next cycle. Alright. So this is the corpus luteum. Now slowly and gradually this corpus luteum will degenerate. It will get smaller and get degenerate. Okay, so this is the corpus luteum. So these are the four very important things, two important hormones for the ovary, and which is responsible for maintaining this menstrual cycle. Now let us see that how does it takes place. So let's erase this first and then we'll start with that. We have already learned that in the human female, if is the uterus. This uterus is having following 3 lines. Alright. So as we have studied that the inner line is called as the endometrium. Middle one is myometrium. And the outer one is called perimetrium. So now in this, the inner one which is here, this endometrium is going to play a major role. As we have discussed, this endometrium layer is made up of blood vessels plus mucus. So now what is going to happen in this case? In this case, there will be the blood vessels will start getting thicker and more thicker. It is always tries to get thicker to provide cushion to the embryo, a proper support to the embryo in this hope that maybe this time when ovum has got released from either of the ovaries, then it will get fertilized and come over here. So this uterus is in that particular hope that this time fertilization is going to happen. So it makes cushion of the blood vessels so that it can support the young one, support the embryo, developing embryo. But when the egg is unfertilized, when egg doesn't get fertilized, then the ovum reaches over here, and after the 28th day, when again the hormonal actions takes place, estrogen takes place, a huge number of then this blood vessels get ruptured. The endometrium layer, it gets ruptured, and then the blood vessels and mucus get shed off through vagina. Alright, so this is the process of menstrual cycle. On every 28th day, maybe 21 8 plus 1 or 28 minus 1 it can be. So in the hope when endometrium has been made its inner line more thicker, made up of blood vessels so that it can provide cushion to the embryo, but if the egg is not fertilized, it will be reaching over here, and this blood vessel will get ruptured, and through this blood vessel the ovum will also come out of the body, and this process is called as the menstrual cycle. Now as you know that in every month either of the ovary produces egg. For example, if in the month of April, there are the 2 months, April and May. So in April month, if right ovary has produced egg, then in the May month left is going to produce egg. Okay, this happens. Only very rare cases there when both the ovaries produces eggs, and that also happens just once or twice in a female's body. Okay, otherwise it doesn't happen so. It's like alternate ovaries produces egg. Fine. So this is about the menstrual cycle in the human female's body. So hope that this is clear to you, and this menstrual cycle which you have seen, it lasts for 3 to 5 days, and after 3 to 5 days again it goes on calculating the numbers, and again next 28 plus 1 or minus 1, the next menstruation will happen. One more thing is that from the first day of menstrual cycle it is counted that on the 14th day, probably on the 14th day, the ovary is going to produce egg, or it passes egg to the fallopian tube. Got that? So from the first day of menstruation you will count, and when the 14th day reaches, maybe 15th also, so on the 14th day egg comes in the fallopian tube and stays there for 24 hours and wait for the sperm cell to come and fuse with it. So so that it can be fertilized, it can be developed to the zygote. So this is all about the menstrual cycle. Hope you are clear with this. So thank you for watching the video.